9. The primitive accumulation of capital. Under the socialist system which formerly existed in the Soviet Union, the working class was the collective owner of the means of production of industry. As has been demonstrated in the previous sections, the Soviet working class has now been expropriated of these means of production, which have become the effective property of a new class of Soviet capitalists in the form of directors of industrial enterprises. This process is essentially similar to that which Marx, describing the development of capitalist society out of feudal society, called the primitive accumulation of capital. The capitalist system presupposes the complete separation of the laborers from all property in the means by which they can realize their labor. The process, therefore, that clears the way for the capitalist system can be none other than the process which takes away from the laborer the possession of this means of production, a process that transforms, on the one hand, the social means of subsistence and production into capital, on the other, the immediate producers into wage laborers. The so-called primitive accumulation, therefore, is nothing else than the historical process of divorcing the producer from the means of production. K. Marx, Capital, Volume 1, London, 1974, p. 668. 10. The sale of labor power. Marx defined labor power as human capacity for labor. By labor power or capacity for labor is to be understood the aggregate of those mental and physical capabilities existing in a human being, which he exercises whenever he produces a use, value of any description. K. Marx, Capital, Volume 1, London, 1974, p. 164. A worker who does not control means of production has no commodity he can sell in order to live except his labor power. In order that a man may be able to sell commodities other than labor power, he must of course have the means of production. K. Marx, Ibid, Volume 1, p. 165. Since, as has been demonstrated, the Soviet workers have been expropriated of the means of production, they have now no means of living except to sell their labor power to those who control the means of production, that is, to the new class of Soviet capitalists. Naturally, contemporary Soviet propagandists who wish to present Soviet society as socialist, deny that Soviet workers sell their labor power, deny that labor power in the Soviet Union is a commodity. In a socialist country, i.e., in the contemporary Soviet Union, WBB, the economic laws that make labor power a commodity do not exist. Jens Hiltsov, concerning the subject of the economics of higher education, in Vestnik Moskovskogo Universiteta, Seria Ekonomika, Journal of Moscow University, Economic Series, No. 1, 1973, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 5, September 1974, p. 76. Under socialism, i.e., in the contemporary Soviet Union, WBB, labor power is not a commodity. V. M. Batyrev, Commodity-Money Relations Under Socialism, in The Soviet Planned Economy, Moscow, 1974, p. 156. Such propagandists refer to Soviet workers as disposing over their labor power, suggesting that the right to do so is a benefit enjoyed by Soviet workers and not by those in orthodox capitalist countries. Under socialism, a working person constantly retains the right to dispose freely over his labor power. He realizes this right by concluding a labor contract with enterprise. A. Sukhov, Labor Mobility and Its Causes, in Nauchny doklady Vysheshkali, Ekonomikeski Nauki, Scientific Reports of Higher Schools, Economic Science, No. 4, 1972, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 7, November 1974, p. 29. But since Soviet workers dispose over their labor power by disposing of it to enterprises in return for money, wages, the term disposition must be regarded as a mere euphemism for sale. 11. The value of labor power. As has been shown, in the contemporary Soviet Union labor power is bought and sold, it is a commodity. The value of labor power, according to Marx's analysis, is determined, like that of any other commodity, by the amount of socially necessary labor required for its production, i.e., by the value of the means of subsistence conventionally, in a particular society at a particular time, required for the maintenance of the worker and his dependents. The value of labor power is determined, as in the case of every other commodity, by the labor time necessary for the production, and consequently also for the reproduction, of this special article. In other words, the value of labor power is the value of the means of subsistence necessary for the maintenance of the laborer. On the other hand, the number and extent of his so-called necessary wants, as also the modes of satisfying them, depend, to a great extent on the degree of civilization of a country. In contradistinction therefore to the case of other commodities, there enters into the determination of the value of labor power a historical and moral element. Nevertheless, in a given country at a given period the average quantity of the means of subsistence necessary for the laborer is practically known. The sum of the means of subsistence necessary for the production of labor power must include the means necessary for the laborer's substitutes, i.e., his children, in order that this race of peculiar commodity owners may perpetuate its appearance in the market. K. Marx, Capital, Volume 1, London, 1974, p. 167, 168. Contemporary Soviet economists, denying that labor power is a commodity in the Soviet Union, are compelled to declare that here the concept value of labor power does not exist. Since in a socialist society the economic laws that make labor power a commodity do not exist, the category value of labor power is also absent. Jens Hiltsov, concerning the subject of the economics of higher education, in Vestnik Moskovskogo Universiteta, Seria Ekonomika, Journal of Moscow University, Economic Series, No. 1, 1973, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 5, September 1974, p. 76. But, although using circuitous language to say so, they are compelled to admit the existence of the concept of value of labor power in the Soviet Union in reality. The expenditures of labor on the cost of reproducing labor power, or the cost of reproducing labor power are, they say, assessed in value terms which are precisely equivalent to the value of labor power as analyzed by Marx. The objective factor which determines this level, of wages, WBB, is the need to provide factory and office workers, with the means of livelihood sufficient for the reproduction of labor power. The general law of the need to replace the expenditure of labor power operates under socialism. Its substance is that society objectively needs to reproduce labor power and restore the workers' physical and mental energies expended in the production process and has to provide workers and their families with the material and cultural means of livelihood. Y. L. Mainovic, Wages Systems, in The Soviet Planned Economy, Moscow, 1974, p. 230. Under socialism, the expenditures of labor on the reproduction of skilled labor power are assessed in value terms. The cost of reproducing skilled labor power is the value assessment of equivalence of the living means that form the fund for the compensation of labor power or, in other words, it the monetary assessment of the standard of living of the population of socialist society in a certain period of time. Jens Hiltsov, Ibid, p. 76. These economists claim that the cost of reproducing labor power in the Soviet Union is distinguished from the value of labor power in orthodox capitalist countries by the fact that the former rises with the development of productive forces. Under socialism, the specific feature of the law of the reproduction of labor power and the extended reproduction of workers' living conditions is the direct and immediate link between these conditions and the development of the productive forces. This is one sign of the tremendous advantages of the socialist economy over the capitalist. Under socialism, the development of the productive forces not only provides suitable opportunities for raising wages but also created the need to increase them in full conformity with the growth of material resources available to society. Y. L. Mainovic, Ibid, p. 230-1. But Marx held that the value of labor power depends partly on the degree of civilization existing in a particular country at a particular time. Thus, if the productivity of labor rises, the degree of civilization rises, and so also the value of the means of subsistence conventionally required for the maintenance of the worker and his dependents, and therefore the value of labor power. The value of labor power rises because there is a rise in the value of the means of subsistence required for its reproduction. K. Marx, Ibid, Volume 3, p. 114. This is admitted by contemporary Soviet economists. Under capitalism, of course, the general law of growing needs also operates. Y. L. Mainovic, Ibid, p. 231. 12. The price of labor power. The price of labor power, i.e., the level of wages, fluctuates in a competitive labor market like the price of any other commodity around its value in accordance with relation of supply and demand on the market. Wages will rise and fall, in a competitive labor market, WBB, according to the relation of supply and demand, according to the turn taken by competition between the buyers of labor power, the capitalists, and the sellers of labor power, the workers. Within these variations, however, the price of labor power, WBB, will be determined by the labor time necessary to produce this commodity, labor power. K. Marx, Wage Labor and Capital, in Selected Works, Volume 1, London, 1943, p. 262. As has been said, wage levels in the contemporary Soviet Union continue to be regulated by the central state apparatus. But, as in orthodox capitalist countries, this state regulation of wage levels is intended to bring the power of the state to the assistance of enterprise managements in resisting pressure from their organized workers to force up the level of wages, in contradiction with the aim of ensuring that real wages grow more slowly than productivity of labor. It is intended, in other words, to resist the monopoly power of the workers in so far as this may be brought about by genuine trade union organization. In the case of the contemporary Soviet Union, this means, as will be shown in the section entitled Corporatism, organization outside the official trade union channels. It is not intended to, and does not, eliminate competition between buyers and sellers of labor power and the resultant fluctuation of the price of labor power around its value in accordance with the relation of supply and demand on the labor market. Thus, enterprises compete with one another for labor power. Circumstances prompt new enterprises to entice personnel, especially skilled personnel, from old enterprises. Such a practice is widespread. E.g. Antisenkov, the availability of housing and personnel turnover, in Izvestia Sibirskogo Отделения Akademii Nauk SSSR, Seria Obshcheственных Nauk, Journal of the Siberian Section of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR, Social Science Series, Number 11 1972, in Problems of Economics, Volume 16, Number 3, July 1973, p. 65. In this competition for labor power, enterprises use, of course, not only the attraction of higher wages, but also those of higher bonuses and higher welfare services. This will be discussed in later sections. On the other hand, contemporary Soviet economists admit that the high mobility of Soviet workers is primarily due to the competitive search for such higher wages and better living conditions. In 1967, 5.5 million persons moved from one city to another, 3.1 million moved from villages to cities, and 1.5 million moved from cities to villages. In addition, several million persons moved from one village to another. V. Perevidenstev, Migration of the Population and the Utilization of Labor Resources, in Voprosi Ekonomiki, Problems of Economics, Volume 13, Number 1, March 1971, p. 40. Manpower turnover is influenced by a number of factors that are basically connected either with working conditions or with differences in levels of material well-being. Approximately 50% of all persons leaving their jobs at their own volition do so for these reasons, i.e., level of earnings, housing and social conditions, WBB. At the Altai tractor plant, 11.3% of the total number leaving their jobs did so because of dissatisfaction with their wage level. In Leningrad and Ufa, 20 to 21% of the workers left their jobs for this reason. L. Kuprenko, Influence of the Standard of Living on the Movement of Labor Resources, in Voprosi Ekonomiki, Problems of Economics, No. 3, 1972, in Problems of Economics, Volume 15, No. 5, September 1972, p. 63-4, 65. Of late the scale of variable migration has been increasing with ever greater intensity in the USSR. L. Lugovskaya, Current Problems of Urbanization, in Planovi Hozyayestvo, Planned Economy, No. 8, 1972, in Problems of Economics, Volume 16, No. 1, May 1973, p. 96. Some workers repeatedly switch one job for another in search of maximum advantages, including advantages in housing. E.g. Anton Senkov, Ibid, p. 65. In the course of a year 59.1% of all personnel in the national economy take part in real transfers, i.e., change their jobs either within the same enterprise or to a different enterprise, WBB. Every year in the national economy several tens of millions of persons make transfers, their overall number exceeds 100 million. Approximate calculations show that not more than half of this movement is associated with the interests of the development of production and of the workforce. V.S. Nemchenko, Mobility of Labor Resources, in Vestnik Moskovskogo Universiteta, Seria Ekonomika, Journal of Moscow University, Economic Series, No. 1, 1974, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 6, October 1974, p. 81, 88. A study of migrants in regions of new industrial development in the West Siberian lowlands, with a relatively unfavorable climate, revealed that over 50% of the migrants came in quest of higher earnings. Approximately 70% of those persons who have quit their jobs to take positions in new places receive higher wages than they did in the old places. A. Sukhov, Labor Mobility and Its Causes, in Nochny doklady Vysheshkali, Ekonomikeski Nauki, Scientific Reports of Higher Schools, Economic Science, No. 4, 1974, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 7, November 1974, p. 26, 31. Personnel turnover was 19.8% in industry in 1972. V. Korshagen and V. Filipov, Labor Activity of the Population, in Planovi Hozyayestvo, Planned Economy, No. 8, 1974, in Problems of Economics, Volume 17, No. 9, January 1975, p. 99. Thus, there is, in the contemporary Soviet Union, competition between buyers and sellers of labor power. And since the labor market is a competitive one, the price of labor power fluctuates around its value in accordance with the relation of supply and demand on that labor market. The Soviet labor market was, in 1967, given concrete form by the establishment of labor exchanges, called manpower utilization agencies. In 1967 Republic manpower utilization agencies were established. They are responsible for the job placement of workers and employees. V. Korshagen, Utilization of Manpower Resources in the New Five-Year Plan, in Planovi Hozyayestvo, Planned Economy, No. 4, 1971, in Problems of Economics, Volume 14, No. 6, Okotber 1971, p. 46. Under the socialist system formerly in operation in the Soviet Union, workers' wages were based, in all spheres where this was practicable, on piecework in accordance with the principle of socialism that a worker's remuneration should be proportional to the quantity and quality of the work performed. Inch socialism. Termed by Marx the first phase of communism, we have the distribution of articles of consumption according to the amount of work performed, v.I. Lenin, The State and Revolution, in Selected Works, Volume 7, London, 1946, p. 84-5. The basic system for the remuneration of labor in our country is the piecework system, pure and simple. N. Schwernick, Report to the 9th Congress of Trade Unions, 1932, cited in S&B Webb, Soviet Communism, A New Civilization, London, 1935, p. 704. In a capitalist economy, there is, of course, pressure from management to cut piecework rates as workers increase productivity. In a socialist economy this pressure does not exist. Where profit-making is the recognized object of industrial undertakings, there is a constant danger of the employer taking advantage of the workers' increased output by cutting the rate. Where the profit-making motive has been swept away, the danger of the rate being cut in order to increase the owner's profits is eliminated. S&B Webb, Ibid, p. 706. Since the economic reform and the reintroduction of profit as the motive and regulator of social production in the Soviet Union, pressure to cut piecework rates with increased productivity occurs, just as in an orthodox capitalist country. The introduction of new technology involves the downward revision of piece rates. E.g. Lieberman, Economic Levers for Fulfilling the Plan for Soviet Industry, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Planning, Profit and Incentives in the USSR, Volume 1, New York, 1966, p. 59. Further, Marx points out that in an orthodox capitalist economy where there is strong resistance on the part of the workers to downward revision of piece rates in such circumstances, managements often prefer to switch from piecework to time rates as the basis of wage payments. Where a particular rate of piece wage has for a long time been fixed by tradition, and its lowering, therefore, presented especial difficulties, the masters sometimes had recourse to its compulsory transformation into time wages. K. Marx, Capital, Volume 1, London, 1974, p. 520. Contemporary Soviet economists urge that the same process be adopted in the Soviet Union. Piecework remuneration sometimes hinders the introduction of new technology. Neither the shop superintendents, nor the foremen, nor the workers themselves have sufficient inducement for corresponding reductions in the rates of payment. The time and bonus system of payment is free from these shortcomings. The more our industry is mechanized and automated, the more reason there is to pay the worker a fixed rate. E.g. Lieberman, Ibid, p. 59. The piece rate system will gradually be used less and less because of the spreading of comprehensive mechanization and automation. Y. L. Mainovic, Wages Systems, in The Soviet Planned Economy, Moscow, 1974, p. 254. And, in fact, there has been, in recent years, a decrease in the proportion of industrial workers paid on the basis of piecework rates and an increase in the proportion paid on the basis of time rates. Percent of industrial workers paid on the basis of piecework rates or time rates. 1962, 60.5%, 39.5%. 1965, 57.6%, 42.4%. 1969, 56.6%, 43.4%. Y. L. Mainovic, Ibid, p. 246. As has been said in the previous section, Marx held that in a capitalist society real wage levels tend to rise with the development of the productive forces. The aim of a capitalist class, however, is to try to ensure that, even if real wages grow, they grow more slowly than the growth of the productivity of labor. In these conditions, the proportion of total national income received by the working class falls despite the rise in real wages, i.e., its exploitation increases. This is, naturally, also the policy of the Soviet capitalist class. An important condition for development of the economy of the enterprise is a growth in labor productivity that outstrips the growth of wages. Only in such a case can the enterprise achieve a systematic drop in its production costs and an increase in accumulations. V. Sokolov, M. Nazarov and N. Kozlov, The Firm and the Customer, in Ekonomikeskiya Gazeta, Economic Gazette, No. 1, 1965, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Planning, Profit and Incentives in the USSR, Volume 1, New York, 1966, p. 265. The priority growth of labor productivity over the growth in wages must be strictly observed. Soviet Economy Forges Ahead, Moscow, 1973, p. 18-19. Besides the general laws inherent in the socialist economy as a whole, there are a number of regularities which appear in different forms in each separate sector of the economy. Among them may be mentioned, the faster growth of labor productivity as compared with the rise in average wages. S. Kamnitzer, The Experience of Industrial Management in the Soviet Union, Moscow, 1975, p. 19-20. This aim was achieved during the period of the Ninth Five-Year Plan, 1971-75, when the average wages of workers rose by 20%, while the productivity of labor rose by 23%. A. N. Kosygin, Guidelines for the Development of the National Economy of the USSR for 1976-1980, 25th Congress CPSU, Moscow, 1976, p. 13, 18. It is planned to accentuate this trend during the period of the 10th Five-Year Plan, 1976-80, when it is envisaged that the average wages of workers will rise by 16-18%, while the productivity of labor will rise by 27%. A. N. Kosygin, Ibid, p. 24, 35. Naturally, therefore, most contemporary Soviet economists agree that the one aspect of centralized economic planning which ought to be retained is state control of wage levels. In drafting a plan, an enterprise must, of course, adhere to established nationwide standards, such as official salaries, rates of basic wages for manpower. E.g. Lieberman, Planning Production and Long-Term Operation, in Voprozy Ekonomiki, Problems of Economics, No. 8, 1962, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Opus Citation, Volume 1, p. 71. The introduction of a unified state wage rate system has created the requisites for raising the economic level of planning labor productivity and wages. B. Sukharevsky, on improving the forms and methods of material incentives, in Voprozy Ekonomiki, Problems of Economics, No. 11, 1962, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Opus Citation, Volume 1, p. 115. Some comrades thought that it would be expedient to do away with the system of centrally determined wage rates and salaries and allow each enterprise to solve this problem in its own way. Such a view is incorrect. The socialist system of economy cannot do without the state regulation of wages. Avilkov, A Mighty Stimulus for the Development of Production, in Pravda, Truth, November 14, 1965, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Opus Citation, Volume 2, p. 169. Centrally established basic rates and salaries constitute, as before, the basis of wages. State regulation of wages is necessary. The new system of economic stimulation of production preserves the state regulation of wages. B. Sukharevsky, The Enterprise and Material Stimulation, in Ekonomikeskiya Gazeta, Economic Gazette, No. 49, 1965, in M. E. Sharp, edition, Opus Citation, Volume 2, p. 216, 217.